Welcome. Thank you very much for joining this New Zealand Sign Language webinar today. Today, I'm going to focus on teaching you a few phrases so that you have some skills in communicating, but I'd also like to talk a little bit about the context of New Zealand Sign Language and also issues to do with masks. My name is Sara Pivac Alexander, and I'm a senior lecturer here at Victoria University in the School of Linguistics and Applied Language Studies. I'm deaf, and you will hear the voice of an interpreter, a New Zealand Sign Language interpreter, who will be interpreting for me today. Before I go ahead, just want to let you know, if you do have a question that comes to mind, you can type that question into the Q&A box, and at the end of my presentation, I will try my best to answer as many questions as possible. Okay, so this week is, as you probably know, New Zealand Sign Language Week from today until next Sunday. And it's a big week for the deaf community. It's been celebrated every year since 2007. And that was 1 year after New Zealand Sign Language became an official language. And so every year since 2007, we've had this week to celebrate our language. So I want to thank you for joining us in that celebration this week. The aims of New Zealand Sign Language Week really are to raise awareness of the language and understanding of the deaf community and culture, and to encourage people all over New Zealand to learn a little bit of sign language. So the theme for this year's NZSL Week is Sign Language is Essential. Without New Zealand Sign Language, deaf people like myself really can't function. We need it to communicate. It's essential as air, water, food for us. Our fourth essential is sign language. So during this week, we will see hundreds of taster classes and events and activities happening all over New Zealand. And today, my webinar is one of 3 that we're offering this week through Victoria University. Let me tell you a little bit about who uses NZSL. About 20,000 people in New Zealand say that they can use NZSL, and of those, about 4,500 are deaf people who use it as their main language. And as more people like yourselves become interested, that number increases. A lot of people imagine that sign language is like a manual code for English or a way of signing English, but actually the language has its own grammar and its own structure. In the webinar on Friday, Rachel McKee will talk more about that topic, about the structure of NZSL. Now, are you ready to learn some phrases? I'm ready to start teaching you, so flex your hands and get ready. You'll see that I've got a laptop here, and I'm going to click on this just to show you some simple phrases and words. I'm going to model signs for you, and you can copy and have a go. So please do copy me as you watch along and sign with me. Nobody's watching you, so feel free to do your thing and give it a go, have a practice. Before I start, I'll just teach you one key sign, which is this, again. It looks like a number 2, but it's signed this way. And if you see me sign again, that means I want you to try it again. Okay, it's a key sign for teaching. Now, in case you're wondering which hand to use, I will advise you that if you write with your right hand, if you're a right-hander, then that will be your dominant hand. So a sign like again, you would do it on that hand. If you're a left-hander, then your dominant hand would be your left hand. So you need to know which is your dominant hand and then use that to follow me. So we've done again, moving on. Good morning. That's simple. Hearing people as well as deaf people use this gesture for good, And morning represents the idea of a sun rising. You can see the circle of the sun rising above the horizon. So let's do that phrase. Good morning. Okay, again. Good morning. Tomorrow morning, you can tell your partner or somebody that you like, good morning. Give it a go. Next phrase. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? All one sign. notice that this one sign translates as how are you. As I said before, sign language isn't the same structure as English. Often we'll have combined meanings in one sign, so it would translate as how are you, but it's really one sign. Okay, hope your hands are getting warmed up. Next one. Okay, for yourself, point to yourself. I'm good. I'm good. That's easy. The next one. Tired. I'm tired. Tired. Okay, I'll show you a role play of a dialogue. Hi, how are you? I'm good. Or, hi, how are you? I'm tired. Okay, and next. Already you've learned this first person pronoun. You can use that again to point to yourself. And name. Name with this handshake. In English, we use the word is in a sentence like this, but not in NZSL. It works differently. So my name. And then you would finger spell your name. There are lots of posters and resources online where you can learn the alphabet. I'm not going to take the time to teach the alphabet today because it's 26 letters. It would take a little while, but let's try that again. My name. And then finger spell your name. Name. And then your name. Again. My name. Okay. As I said before, sign language grammar works a little bit differently. So in English, you have a sentence like, what's your name? But in NZSL, the order is different. Literally, it would be name you what, or you name what. Again. Now I'll do a little role play for your dialogue. Hi, what's your name? My name is. Okay, simple. Perhaps you might run into a deaf person in a shop or a deaf person somewhere, and you can ask them, are you deaf? Using this two-fingered handshake again, I'll do it straight on for you. Are you deaf? Just two signs, you, deaf. And the deaf person would be surprised if they saw you say that. They might start signing to you, but it's always a good question to ask a person if you think they are deaf. Are you deaf? And if a deaf person starts signing to you after you've asked them that, you can say this, I'm learning sign. The sign for learn shows something coming into your brain, or you're picking up something and putting it into your brain. I'm learning sign. I'm learning sign. Okay, one more time. If you're having communication difficulties with a person you think is deaf, you can say this. A deaf person might nod and be pleased, or they might have some paper with them, or you can get some paper. We'll sign that again. Just point you and write on paper, you write, with your eyebrows raised, which makes it a question. And that's a really useful phrase. Deaf people will often ask in a shop, they'll do that. They'll say, can you write? And a person working in the shop might be puzzled, but the meaning of write looks fairly obvious, doesn't it? And the last phrase, which everyone needs to know, is thank you. Do it from this angle, thank you. Thank you. Make sure you don't sign it from your lips, because people might misinterpret, get the wrong message that you're blowing them a kiss. Or from under your chin, which could be a rude gesture in some cultures. So touching your chin. So I showed you 10 phrases today. And if you forget them, that's okay. This video is recorded. And when the webinars are finished, you will be sent a link. So you can always watch them again and try again with me. One of my other colleagues here, Nikki, will be giving a webinar on Wednesday, and she's going to be showing you some really useful resources that are online for learning NZSL independently. So now I'd like to, before we close, just briefly talk about how NZSL users are managing in the time of masks, which has been a new experience for us during the pandemic. So there's two different challenges for us. One is when a deaf person meets a hearing person in a shop or a public situation and they are wearing masks. Of course, we can't lip read. Not all deaf people are adept at lip reading, but even if they aren't, still it's very difficult to communicate when a person has a mask on. And then there's in the deaf community, when deaf people are communicating with one another in sign language, of course they can see the signing, but the language doesn't work as smoothly and fluently. So we will tend to take our masks off if we're in a private space. We know in public we have to leave them on. But so there are two different issues for us. As you can see, the face is really critical for sign language. It shows emotion, it shows affect and emphasis. And if you sign without the face involved, it's very dry. Also, the face in sign language is important for grammar in sign language, as Rachel will talk about on Friday. Sometimes also there is one sign which has more than one meaning. So for example, this sign, which means cake, but in a different context, it also means hospital. So the manual, the hands part is the same, but we require the mouth to differentiate those. So I'll put my mask on to show you what it looks like. Cake, hospital, or something. You have no idea which one I'm actually saying. So deaf people are pretty good at figuring out context, but it's still a lot more effort if we have to read through a mask. So the ways that you can help in that situation, if you're in a mask situation, is to learn a little bit of sign. That's helpful. Also to use pointing. Perhaps if you're talking about something that's around you in a shop or in a situation, just point to something and that guides the deaf person to look at it and know what you're referring to. I know that in hearing culture, pointing can sometimes be frowned upon or considered rude, but for deaf people, it will be much appreciated. Also, using pen and paper writing is extremely useful, or you can do it on your phone or whatever you've got at your disposal. Using gestures is also a great thing to do. I know people might feel a bit embarrassed about using gestures, but think about simple gestures like money, this for money. This can mean, could link to how much, or you need to pay me, or just simple gestures that try and be creative, that add some meaning for deaf people. I know that in Anglo cultures, sometimes using the hands is not as comfortable for a lot of people, whereas in other countries, gesture is used a lot more readily, but it's extremely helpful for deaf people, whether or not you're wearing a mask. So I hope that, you know, as we go back to normal times and masking becomes less prevalent, that will become less of an issue for us. But now I think it's time to wrap up. I hope you've learned something today, maybe a few signs, phrases, what it's like for deaf people in the pandemic. And I just want to thank my interpreter for interpreting. And I hope that you will go on to learn a few more signs and maybe you'll have a chance in your life to use them. It's fantastic if people know a little bit of this official language. Okay, thank you and happy NZSL week to you.